After a scheduled 3-hour layover in Atlanta, coupled with an additional unscheduled 45 minutes delay in takeoff, and after a long, cramped, and uncomfortable transatlantic flight with a mad rush through the Amsterdam airport in order to make my next connection, I finally arrived in Kiev, Ukraine, after noon on Saturday, July 6th. Because of the flight delay in Atlanta, however, my bags did not make it to Kiev until the next day. Taras Shevchenko was a 19th century Ukrainian poet, writer, artist, public and political figure, as well as folklorist and ethnographer, whose literary heritage is regarded to be the foundation of modern Ukrainian literature, and to a large extent, the modern Ukrainian language. He is also known for many masterpieces as a painter and an illustrator. Mikhailo Hrushevsky was a Ukrainian academician, politician, historian, and statesman, one of the most important figures of the Ukrainian national revival of the early 20th century. He was the country's greatest modern historian, foremost organizer of scholarship, leader of the pre-revolution Ukrainian national movement, head of Ukraine's 1917 to 1918 revolutionary parliament, and a leading cultural figure in Soviet Ukraine in the 1920s. He died under mysterious circumstances in 1934. Mykola Lashenko was a Ukrainian composer, pianist, conductor, and ethnic music expert who lived from 1842 till 1912. The Golden Gate of Kiev is one of the oldest edifices in the city, dating back to the 11th century reign of King Yaroslav the Wise. It was originally one of the many southern gates of the city, but later became the main entry point into Kiev. Yaroslav the Wise ordered a church built on top of the gate, and because of its golden dome, the gate was often afterwards referred to as the Golden Gate. It was the subject of the Great Gate of Kiev movement from Modest Mussorgsky's 19th century piano suite entitled Pictures at an Exhibition. Khmelnytsky was a 17th century Cossack leader of a rebellion which turned into a Ukrainian war of liberation from Poland. The result of the successful rebellion was a union with Russia, sort of an out of the frying pan and into the fire situation, for which Khmelnytsky has been criticized by many, especially the poet Taras Shevchenko, whose monument was shown on an earlier slide. Despite the criticism, however, Khmelnytsky is considered to be a father of the nation. Just as we Christians gather for worship on Sunday mornings, so apparently do these members of a pagan cult in Kiev.
Maybe I will tell the other people that there is something happening here. Yeah. They want to come. Okay. Yeah, he got it.
These four key figures in the Christianization of Ukraine are the Apostle Andrew, who supposedly visited the area on one of his missionary journeys, two 9th century monks who were brothers who helped develop an alphabet for the people so that the scriptures could be available to them, and a 10th century princess who was the first Ukrainian ruler to be baptized. All are considered saints and equals as apostles of Christ. This monument, erected in 2001, honors the 1991 independence of Ukraine from the Soviet Union. The figure at the top is Bereginya, the Slavic goddess of protection of the home. This is one of two monuments in Kiev dedicated to the legendary founders of the city, the brothers Kiev, Shek, and Korif, and their sister Lieben. This statue is an independent square in the center of the city. The Friendship Arch, constructed in 1982, is dedicated to the unification of Russia and Ukraine. I don't think there is much friendship left between the two countries now. Our visit to the Chernobyl Museum was a highlight of my entire trip. The Chernobyl disaster was a catastrophic nuclear accident that occurred on April 26, 1986, at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in Ukraine, then officially the Ukrainian SSR, which was under the direct jurisdiction of the central authorities of the Soviet Union. An explosion and fire released large quantities of radioactive particles into the atmosphere, which spread over much of the western USSR and Europe. The Chernobyl disaster is widely considered to have been the worst nuclear power plant accident in history, and is one of only two classified as a Level 7 event, the maximum classification, on the International Nuclear Event Scale. The other such event was the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear disaster in Japan in 2011. The battle to contain the contamination and avert a greater catastrophe ultimately involved over 500,000 workers and a cost estimated at $1.5 billion. 31 people died during the accident itself, and long-term effects such as cancer and deformities are still being accounted for. Alexei, a former operator at the plant who happened to be off-duty the night of the incident, was fascinating, explaining to us in perfect English that the incident had happened because of a combination of operator errors, poor test procedure planning, and design flaws for the entire facility. He summed it up as human incompetence. From the site of a disaster caused by human incompetence, we then drove a short distance to the site of a disaster caused by human wickedness. Babi Yar is a ravine where a series of massacres were carried out by the Nazis during their campaign against the Soviet Union. The most notorious and best documented of these massacres took place on September 29th and 30th, 1941, when 33,771 Jews were killed in a single operation. The decision to kill all the Jews in Kiev was made by the military governor, and it was carried out by soldiers and SD and SS police battalions, all backed by the local police. The massacre was the largest single mass killing for which the Nazi regime and its collaborators were responsible during its campaign against the Soviet Union, and it is considered to be the largest single massacre in the history of the Holocaust to that particular date. Victims of other massacres at the site included thousands of Soviet prisoners of war, communists, gypsies, Ukrainian nationalists, and civilian hostages. It is estimated that between 100,000 and 150,000 lives were taken at Babi Yar during the German occupation. The bodies were simply thrown into the ravine.